Hi teachers, this is Karen Koger. We're talking about urban music education perspectives, and this segment is going to be discussing your administration, what your administration wants you to do, what they're willing to give you, and what they just don't even think about because they don't care. And also, I want to talk about your classroom, which also has to do quite a bit actually, with the administrators. If we get to it, we may go back and talk about curriculum just a little bit, but I don't think I'm going to get to it in this 20-minute section. So you've just come to school, and the principal says, we're so glad you're with us, and everything you need is back in your classroom. Your classroom is, it's kind of an office, but that's okay. You can move the tables around, and in there is a filing cabinet. And in the filing cabinet is a lot of stuff that the other teacher that was there last year left some stuff for you. Okay, if you're not shivering by now, you will be very soon, because in the file cabinet, you might have, say, 2 or 3 sound innovations, probably not because they're too new, and maybe some essential elements. Of course, we have to have that, about Dr. Gillespie. But anyhow, maybe 4 essential elements books, maybe a couple of volume 1, or maybe 5 volume 1 books. There might be an old rosin, yeah. You might get, oh look, there's some instruments on the floor, and this is all you get for instruments. Oh look, you get 2 basses, that's nice. Hang on. Oh, and these look like there might be some different sizes of violins. Oh, and you're in an urban setting where people may or may not be able to afford instruments, and you're supposed to give concerts, and you want them playing all the same thing. Oh my goodness. So you see where I'm coming from right now, okay? So let's start first. I'm gonna hover around the administrators for a minute. So your administrators have a school, or actually a school district, and really they just want to have teachers in the rooms, and they want you to do what you're hired to do, which is to teach orchestra, and they want you to be proactive and make it happen, whether they help you or not. And the thing is, a lot of people will get frustrated or upset with the administrators. They probably don't know every little thing that's in each school, but they know that they've had some quality music programs in their district. So maybe let's say 70-80% of what's being done in that school district is fabulous, and there's that 10 to 20% that could be improved. And that's kind of where you come in, because through your string program, you're going to make the administrators look better. And you're going to be creative in the way that you do it, okay? So let's come from the administrator's perspective, or your principal, or even your director of your schools. They provide the leadership and the ideology. They want to make sure that you're teaching in a nurturing environment with all the kids safe. They want you to be teaching to the fundamentals. They want you to be teaching so that all the kids are successful, because that's what they're preaching out and about, making sure that the community knows that they are doing their job. They want to provide resources, but they don't know if they have the money. And they, other teachers have survived without them getting any extra money. And there have been kids that take orchestra, so that's good. And they're still balancing all the pressures from the parents and the Board of Education and the contributors and things like that. So that's kind of their job. They're not really down in the nitty-gritty where we are. But we need to bring them down to our job. And so what I do is I try and get my administrators, whether they're principals, directors, whatever, at our shows so that they can see these kids doing amazing things. And so I send invitations, or a friend of mine, Jill Osborne, out in Tempe, Arizona, she writes stories for the program, And in the story, the principal, the administrator, some teachers, they're going to have speaking parts. They have to be there. Because if they're not there, that part isn't spoken. Or they might even get to conduct your orchestra. You can stand in the background and give the real cues, but man, oh man, get that administrator in your performances. You can also get them into your classroom. Because let's say that you have a friend of yours that's a fabulous violinist, and today you had invited that fabulous violinist into your classroom to show the kids that what they're doing is really cool, and maybe to share, I don't know, vibrato or shifting or something with them that they've never seen before. This is an event. Your school district, your community is bringing someone from the community that is fabulous to their classrooms, and they might call the news. They might call the local videographer. They might just want to get pictures because their kids are getting an opportunity that they didn't have to provide. Think about that. All right, now, so you're getting them involved, you're bringing them into your classroom. If you think like an administrator, you're not really going to be thinking like a teacher so much. Even though a lot of administrators are teachers, you're going to be thinking like an administrator. An administrator wants to know what they can do for the teachers, and they don't want to think about it. So let's say you want to ask your district for some new instruments. Hi, I'd really like some new instruments. I was wondering if you guys could help me out with this. Oh, we're so sorry. We don't have any money for this, and sounds like it's going to be very expensive, and maybe next year we'll have some money to share with you. Hang up. Okay. Well, that didn't go very well. My ankle's itching, sorry. That didn't go very well. But what if you think like an administrator and talk to your local dealer, maybe a couple of local dealers, get bids on instruments, maybe used ones. Maybe for $75 each, you can get a used instrument from one of the music stores of the instruments that they're going to get rid of because they've got scratches or they've got, a little ding on the edge or whatever, and they're willing to let it part for less money. Write it up. Whatever school you're in, I need 12 more instruments. I need 4 full-size, 3 3/4, whatever. And I've been discussing this with 2 of our local providers, and between them I can get 12 instruments for, I don't know, let's see, what do you think? $250, $300, $500, whatever it is. And I'm willing to go pick them up, and I'm willing to make sure that they make it to our school. And once they get to the school, the kids won't be able to take them out of the school. They will stay at the school, so they'll remain safe. Anything you can tell that administrator and have it written up in a formal piece so that they look at you and think, this is a professional that's just asking for a little bit of money just to make their program flow a little bit easier. The other thing about all those instruments I showed you, let's say you're in an urban setting. A lot of those families can't afford an instrument. So are you going to have 2 basses, 1 cello, 1 viola, and maybe 5 violins in your group every year? To me, that wasn't what I wanted, because I wanted it a little bit more balanced. So I went shopping. I talked to people. I would talk to my principal. I talked to my secretary. The secretaries keep an eye on the finances, and every year they have backup funds that nobody knows about in case they need them or if something cool comes up. And I always talk to my principal and my secretary to see if there was any money available to get 4 pieces, any money available to get instruments, any money available to get rosin. At that point I was still having to buy the rosin. And I don't know, you have to be creative. All right, so all of a sudden you've got your administrators involved. They're like, something's happening over at your school, and they're saying this person is really, I think they're going to make something cool because they're trying to get more instruments, so they must want a bigger program. Yes, we do. And maybe we can support them somehow. And they called the local news and said, this is kind of exciting what's happening at my school. We're going to have 10 new instruments. with our program to allow 20 more kids to play in the orchestra. All of a sudden, your principal has an orchestra program that is bigger, that serves more children, that might get more support, and they are being talked about to the administrators because they're supporting you, and you're saying, you won't believe Mr. or Ms. whatever their name is. This principal has made it possible for us to go to a rest home, go to a church, go to the mall, and take our kids, oh my goodness, our kids from our district to those places and share their talents with the community. It's kind of fun. Okay, all right, let me see what else. In your messages, you need to share with them how your program is bringing up those children and how these kids will be leaders in the community, and you're going to be talking about future employment, future ways to provide for their families, whatever. So you really need to think about how an administrator thinks so that when you present something to them, they really want to see it. Does it make sense? I cannot tell you, when I get into a school and there are 5 instruments and I have low-income kids, let's say 40 or 50 that want to play, I do everything I possibly can to talk to people, whatever. One time I even went over to my another district's high school, and I knew the teachers, and I said, do you think if we asked the high school students to give up their Essential Elements Volume 1, their concert tunes books, maybe their string riffs books, since those are mine, and their anything else that they're not using, whether it be rosin, shoulder rest, chin rest, whatever. I got 7 instruments that high school would never, ever use in their program. 5 of them I would use, and I got 2 colored ones, a pink and a blue, those pretty things. I put one at one school and one at the other school, so when a kid said, hey, Miss Koger, have you heard about those cool colors on those instruments? And I pull it out and I show them how warped the fingerboard is. It became a tool for me because a lot of our low-income students and a lot of our low-income families say, oh, I can get one for $50, and that'll be good for my kid. They'll be so happy I did that for them, and then it doesn't play, and we can't get it tuned, and it doesn't function. So I had a sample now that I could show those parents on concert day, on Meet the Student Day, in 4th grade, when they come in for a little, a little performance just for the beginners. Okay, let's move on. So in my classroom, in urban classrooms, there are kids that can provide for themselves. But because in Arizona, my students wouldn't buy the books, and they wouldn't, they'd steal the books out of the room, no offense to them, because I kept asking, did you have time to get the book yet? And it was my first year, and I thought all the kids would get the book. Because I'm thinking $10, that's not bad, or $18 or $12 for 2 little books. It was, they didn't want to buy the books. They didn't see any value in it. And so then I had to scrounge for materials. So one year I went online and I found all of these wonderful resources that other people were generous enough to share. Charles Consall down in Florida opened up his folder for people, and it was for a short time, and I swear I got a lot of 2, 3, 4 one-part pieces that were common pieces that worked in the classroom, and he was so kind to share. Then Pinterest. Have you looked on Pinterest yet? There are so many of the theme songs from these shows, and also from rock and pop and hip hop that are on Pinterest. Now, as a publisher, we're not supposed to do things like that, I think. That's my understanding. And you can't alter someone else's work. But that's what these kids want to play, because they want to play the cool stuff and they want to sound great. Even if you do the melody by ear, I mean, that's better, I think, than writing it down. But I have written it down, believe me. Star Wars is a huge thing in my classroom. So hopefully you won't go running to John Williams and tell him that I do this. Anyhow, I had to find supplies. I got books that would stay in the classroom, 1 set per class, And that way I'd put it on the stand, the kids would use the books would stay there, and then they would go home and practice the individual pages that I gave them that I'd found from the internet. It was the only way I could think to do it. And we were sharing instruments, even though I had 100 instruments by the time I left that school. We still had to share some instruments at the concerts. That's another nightmare. Okay, anyhow, let's go into the classroom. It seems like in urban settings, behavior can be a concern. But if you come in really positive and in the first 2 to 3 weeks establish strong boundaries as to what is polite, what is respectful, what is, when they come in, this is what you do. You come in, you sit down quietly. If the instruments have been brought out for them, then you just get your instrument out. If you have to get your instrument out in your book, get it quickly, have a seat, get started warming up, okay? And so my students know that once they get there, we're all business. We're fun too, but we're all business about getting into our seats, getting our music open, and starting to play, because that's really what they want to do. And they can work together at that point, and they can practice. But I try very calmly to encourage them with strong boundaries and firmness and elasticity to take care of their space. It's a lot for them to have to get a rubber band or their music folder, and maybe the folder fell out, and so some things are in weird places. So it just makes them work on it, makes them think about it. Okay, calm voice is so important in the classroom. If you go into a heightened voice, they don't like yelling, and some of them may have yelling at home, or in the neighborhoods they hear a lot of yelling. So in a classroom where it is a controlled classroom, if you can keep your voice kind of steady and smiling and open, it seems to bring them in a little bit better. You want to nurture your students during instruction. You want to make sure that you're accepting of religious beliefs and needs. One of my students was out of the classroom a lot, and I caught her up all the time, and I had never heard of all of her religious celebrations, and she had a bunch of them. She was the sweetest thing, and she worked really hard to try and catch up every lesson. Another thing is there are some religions that don't appreciate or celebrate the holidays at all. Anything, birthday, Christmas, anything, nothing. And the parents don't want those kids to be experiencing that music. Another religion, one of my students was not allowed to play music for the month of this celebration. And I never heard of these things because I was pretty much brought up in a Christian area. And so all of a sudden, you're making adjustments and being flexible, and it's so smart because religion's very important to these people and to me, of course. And you have to respect what they bring to the classroom. All right. You also have to be accepting of their heritage, and you need to find out what turns them on. So if they like mariachi music, you might include a mariachi piece. If they like hip-hop, you might help them write one. Last year, Armand Vance, who's now down, I believe, in Texas, he wrote out the way to make a rap. And he gave the orchestra the foundation or the band part for the rap. And then the kids had to write a rap. And we were rhyming and we were coming up with all these things. We had to practice in front of each other. And I ended up doing a rap. At age 56, I was on stage doing my little rap. And my cello's name is Boomer. And it was kind of like Boomer and me, my heart, my soul. It really makes my heart sing or something like that, I forget. But I was up on stage saying this to an audience, and I don't know, it was kind of fun. So you can learn how to do their music. You just have to stop and think about how it's constructed. Okay, rewards seem to be important for this group. And in my schools where I teach now, I'm in United Schools Network through Pro Musica Chamber Orchestra. And they have dollars and deductions. I didn't understand dollars and deductions the first year, and I didn't give them any dollars, and I was giving deductions when their behavior was not so good. And I lost a class. They turned on me. And I just was like, what in the world happened? And the next year, a couple of kids said, we were kind of mean to you, weren't we? And I'm like, a little bit. Anyhow, and I went to one of their sessions about dollars and deductions, and I realized that that's the way they feel that they succeed, is if they get dollars. Even if they just sit up, even if they open their book, they can get dollars, especially if they're learning how to behave, basically. Excuse me. Once I started giving more dollars and talking about them, and then I'm given occasional deduction, it wasn't such a big thing, and the success in my room rose. Another thing that I tried this year that you guys probably already know about was karate belts. Oh my goodness. My kids move faster with karate belts. By February to March, I had beginners in Ode to Joy. Now, to some of you, you may go way past that, but usually for me, Ode to Joy hits about April. And they were in there like a month and a half to 2 months early, just because they got, for the karate belt, the way I did it, I used a shower hook with beads of the color of the karate belt. Then they got extra beads for extra things. They had a charm, and they had their initials or their name somehow. And that hooked onto their case, so that I knew whose case was whose. The second thing, they got to write their name. They got to write on a piece of paper on the wall and sign their signature. The next thing I did was I put up a chart showing the progress, and that made it competitive. And the beginners were feeling so all that, because they had a nicer belt, like a further belt than the advanced. They didn't think about the fact that the advanced had a little bit harder stuff to learn. Anyhow, it was interesting how this thing worked. And in each class, they're like, what's next for the belt? What's next? I want to start practicing that. Okay. And I wanted to go through all the things in the book that led up to it, so they had all their skills. And it was almost impossible to, because they really, really, really wanted to just practice hot cross buns. Can you imagine the excitement? So this really was an amazing thing for me this year. The other thing that happened with the karate belts, they learned them more thoroughly, because they knew I was not going to let them get their belt unless they could play it all the way through in time, pretty much, with good quality sound and pretty much in tune. I mean, I was asking for a lot, and I only have 2 classes a week, and so I at 40 minutes to 50 minutes per class. So we have to move fast in those classes in order for them to get their vocabulary and all their good posture and all that other stuff. And they just love that. So if you haven't tried karate belts, look into it. I got my certificates through Pinterest. Okay, let me tell you something that Todd Finley I found on the internet, and he's 19 big and small classroom management strategies. I picked out a few. Pick appropriate curriculum that benefits their heritage, that benefits the things you want and the things they want. Ask for action, await compliance. That's huge. That is huge. Ask for action, await compliance. Keep consequences minimal. That's important for this group. Rehearse your transitions in and out of the classroom. You will avoid fights, you will avoid messing around, and those kids will be just amazing for you. First year, I didn't do that very well, and then I learned I had to do better. Positive calls throughout the school year. I usually try to get one in at the beginning of the year. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, and it sets the tone for the whole year for orchestra class. It pays to behave. Never punish the entire class. Change your tone often. Ooh, look what you did, and blah, blah, blah. Uh-oh. Now we've got to yeah, you know what I mean. Okay. Be forgiving. Each day I come into the classroom is a new day. Each day they have a chance to prove that they can do it right. And it saved a lot of distress for some of the kids. State the truth when things go wrong. Things go wrong all the time. We know that as musicians. For them, they don't get it. And so talk to them honestly. And the other thing that I found is that some of these kids know more than I knew by the time I got to college. And they sometimes are talked to as adults. And I find that I talk to them honestly, openly, as much as I can, and with intention. And they seem to appreciate that. That's just my experience. Okay, let's go on. So Do you have the right technology? And even before technology, with my, I had mostly Hispanic students in Arizona, in Mesa, Arizona, at one of my schools. The kids lined up to come into my classroom because the cousins and everybody told them that I was rather strict, but that I would be good. And until I started using the verbiage do, re, mi, or whatever from their general music classroom, we started communicating better because I was using the same verbiage that had already been taught for 4 or 5 years. And a lot of doors opened to me in orchestra. It kept feeling like by the time they got their instruments and everything, we were in some foreign language, and they had good music training for 4 or 5 years. As soon as I started using their verbiage and their lingo, my classroom was so much better. And the kids were like, oh, I know how to go do, re, mi. And they did it in tune, and they did it without thinking about it, and it was wonderful. All right, if you're sharing space, do the best you can. Do the best you can. If you don't have recording or audio stuff, bring a boombox with you. We have to do extra for the urban classroom because they don't always have what we think we need. I tend to bring a lot of stuff into the classroom, and I like a lot of color in the classroom. Let's see, explore and celebrate diversity. How do you do 40 students with only one book or shared books and 10 instruments? Beg, borrow, and scrounge. Just do it. Continually talk about it. Continually network. Ask me for a freebie, a piece. I'll send you one. I don't mind. I'm stringriffs.com or stringriffs@gmail.com. I'll send you a free piece, and or scales. I've got some cool scale sheets. I'll send them to you so you can try one or two. Just because I know that it's hard out there when you have no materials. Let's see. The high school teachers change out their strings and their bows quite often, and sometimes you can get 1 year or 2 year used strings that are just fine for elementary, or you can talk to the local violin shop, and they may have some strings that they'll just hold back for you from instruments when they repair them, and then you've got like a whole new set of strings. I got nailed on this on Facebook, but elementary kids want good sound too. Of course they do. But if you have a good quality string that's not, say, one of the lower strings, and it's been used a couple years, you know there's still a little bit of life in there. If it's a rotten string, throw it away and grab the next one, whatever. Always talk to your administration to see if there are grants. Always talk to your administration to see if there's someplace you can walk and perform. Always talk to your administration to see if there's money sitting around that can get you a bus to go somewhere. Perform for your feeders. Perform for anyone who will listen to you so that your class will thrive and will be heard. I went long. I'm sorry. Anyhow, this is a topic that's very close to my heart. Catch me at Q&A, and we'll talk some more if you'd like to. Thanks. Bye.